Unfortunately, the sound suppression in Discord, I think, muted all three of your all's can opens, but I think mine came through.
It's
So,
all right.
but I don't know about you, Evan, but I'm ready to eat some turkey, drink some bourbon, and watch football on Thursday.
The feast is coming, but prior to that, man, we're gonna have a feast of information here today as well from the two gentlemen that are joining us from quite a far away. But yeah, Thanksgiving in a couple days. Everybody get hopefully a couple days off to spend with whoever your friends, your family, your dog, your cat, whatever, and just get in a good mental health space. Take the time off from whatever you're doing for work. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, these are two guests we've been pretty excited about for a while, and we've been trying to, as you can see them now, Jeff Ausdemore and James. I actually am blanking on your last name.
James Catherall.
Catherall. Okay, got it.
My last name.
I'm a terrible host, but we all have brain farts. So, we've been trying to schedule this thing for a while, and before I let Evan take it away and let them introduce them, welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Fantini, and with me as always is
Evan Worrell.
Make sure if you're on podcast services, head over to YouTube and check out all the content there. Comment, like, subscribe, share the podcast with anyone you may think enjoy it. You think may enjoy it. I always mess that sentence up. Head over to Instagram, Facebook, give us a follow, never miss an update at anything we're getting into or doing. Head over to patreon.com or hit the join button right on YouTube if you want to support us financially at all. And Evan, I'll pass it over to you and then we can get this thing rolling.
Yeah, James, I'm actually glad that you did say your last name because my Kentucky accent would have sure said Catherall instead of Catherall. So I'm glad you took it from there. But we'll start with you and just let you kind of give a little bit about your background, your short bio into the activity, and kind of how you are there, and then we'll circle back around to what you're kind of getting into now.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one is I'll totally take Catherall. It's way better than cathedral or catheter or any of those. I've gotten lots of those. That was all growing up. Anyway, yeah, I am James Catherall. I'm from SoCal. I am a SoCal native. I was born in Anaheim, which is the land of Disney, if you are familiar with Anaheim. Grew up all in that area, just in Orange County area, moved in different cities. And then I guess doing my history. So I started in drumming in high school, and then my introduction to drum corps was through a staff member at my high school. They actually went to my sister first. She was a senior in high school and I was a freshman, and she played mellophone, and they talked to her and said, "Hey, have you heard about this drum corps thing?" And we were like, "No." And then they're like, "You should check out this thing called Vanguard." And we were like, "Okay." And so then we went home, and this was literally like pre-YouTube. This was like dating it a little bit when I got introduced. So we didn't have YouTube. I think what we ended up doing is we went online and we bought the DCI Finals DVD from the previous summer and got it and watched it. And that ended up being 2006. And we watched that and just like fell in love with all of it instantly and knew we loved it. And then we both ended up going out to auditions for the 2008 season was the first time we auditioned. And we did Vanguard Cadets, and that was our first season. She played mellophone. I was in the front ensemble playing the bells, and I actually played the celeste, which was a really cool one. That's a little like, go Google that. Celesta, celeste. Super awesome instrument. I got to play a real live acoustic celeste, which was cool. But anyway, so that was my first season, was 2008 Vanguard Cadets, and instantly fell in love with it. I was definitely like, even just to like tell on myself a little bit, that I guess I don't tell a whole lot of people this story, but I was definitely one of the kids that showed up that was terrible. There was probably like, because I originally auditioned for Vanguard, and there was probably like 30 quad drummers auditioning, and I was solidly number 30 out of 30. And had no idea how to do any of it, got cut super fast. I was like 15 years old. And then I went to Vanguard Cadets for quads and also got cut super fast from Vanguard Cadet quads. And then I was like, I just want to do this. Like, let me try anything. And so then I went to the front ensemble, and they were like, "Here, you could play bells." And I was like, "Awesome, I'm in. Let me do it. I'll play bells." So
everybody starts somewhere, folks, is the takeaway on that.
Yep, absolutely. That was my introduction. Was like, I just want to do this. And so played bells, and then did 2 more seasons at Vanguard Cadets playing quads, 09 and 10. And then did a quick venture over to Iowa and did the Colts in 2011.
Red team.
Fun.
Red team. Yep. Got brought over there by a friend of mine. His name was Ryan Yee, and Nick Worth was on the battery staff. So I got to learn from Nick Worth. That was great. That was one of the big attractions, was like, yeah, I want to go learn from Nick Worth. So that was cool. And then after that, I did Vanguard in 2012. And then 2 years of Blue Devils. I did 2013 and 2014. And then aged out in 2014. So that was 7 total seasons. Started when I was 15, right after my sophomore year of high school, all the way until I aged out in 2014. And then on top of that, I did 5 years of WGI groups.
So your back hates you, right? Your back hates you now,
dude,
is what I'm hearing.
It was six years of quads and six summers of quads and 5 indoor seasons of quads.
Dang.
So,
more power to you.
Yeah, dude. My high school didn't have an indoor group at the time, so I didn't do any indoor stuff in high school. But as soon as I graduated, I went out and was a charter member of Pulse Open, which is now turned into POW. But I did the very, very first year of that when we were just Pulse Open. It was just PO, and then we became, and then I did Pulse in 2012. Did like the Pulse World. And then I did RCC for 3 years after that, 13, 14, and then aged out in 2015, RCC playing quads. So that was a whole lot of stuff and a whole long venture of my times. I did a lot of time in it. I loved doing all of it. I know that I pushed myself to get to the very end of it because I know that there was a finite finish line to this thing, and I wanted to see it out to the end. And I definitely don't regret it, and I knew I would have regretted it if I didn't do it. So super happy I did all that time, and it was awesome and learned a lot, and 100% shaped who I am today is because of all that time I did and all those people that I learned from.
Heck yeah.
Cool.
So did you transition to like being on a staff or design or the other side of things right away as soon as you aged out?
Yep, actually, even before that, I mean, I guess I don't know exactly what the whole nationwide scene looks like, but pretty common in SoCal is like a lot of people will be teaching a lot of high schools before they even age out. So I started teaching like literally right after I graduated high school. I like started teaching at the middle school that fed into the high school that I graduated from, and it was like literally just teaching like concert band classes. Like I would just go to the middle school and teach the concert band percussion kids. And then yeah, just kind of kept going from there, kept adding gigs every year, teaching a bunch of high schools, got up to the peak of teaching like 6 high schools in one season. And, but then, I've kind of reeled it back from there, but yeah, it's a lot of teaching even while I was marching. And then as soon as I finished marching, started teaching, especially on the WGI side. I actually didn't do much on the DCI side after I aged out for a while. I took a solid break from DCI after I aged out, but I did a lot of WGI and have worked with WGI groups every year since I've aged out. And yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Before we'll hop over to Jeff, but we'll circle back around and like kind of the information and maybe degree or studying or classes or whatever knowledge you've gathered for what you're doing now before we get into it. But yeah, Jeff, I know I listened to the podcast with Robert and George at the Drum Corps Coffee Shop, and you had a rather unique roadmap into kind of this crazy niche activity that we all know and love today. Well, maybe just a little bit more different than what the typical, I'll say, but whatever works. So the floor is yours. Kind of take us through that a little bit.
Sure, Evan. So first of all, Evan and Mike, thanks for having us on. We're just thrilled to be here. Like we talked about before we started recording, this is a fantastic platform for lots and lots of kids to really see what's out there and hear your perspective. So we're just thrilled to be here. One of the things that is unique about James and I is that he started his career in 2006 as a performer, and that was my first year taking over Blue Knights full-time, the first go-around. So that was kind of a neat commonality that I didn't really know till So that was cool to find out. But unlike James, this is considered maybe the anti-Catherall. I got hooked into drum corps and loved it, but I didn't have all the experience as a performer that James has. So I was a pianist growing up, even though I'm from Germany. I grew up in Michigan, but I was born in Germany. So I consider myself from Michigan. And I fell in love with percussion because I'm a pianist. So my mother's very gifted. And so I came up into the public schools and I fell in love with percussion. And I was fairly comfortable, but a good friend of mine named Brad Wool came back one summer and played a tape for me and started playing things that I had never seen before in my life. And it was just the most even, strong sound I'd ever even imagined. And he said, the best part? And I said, I have no idea. What could be better than this? He said, hold out your hand. So I held out my hand, and he played a roll on my hand. And in that moment in time, as ninth grade Jeff, I looked at him and said, whatever you just did this summer, I want in. I want to go where you went. I want to figure out what you learned. And I was so hooked. Oh, my gosh. I was 15, too. And I went up and I marched in a drum corps called Northern Aurora, and it kind of changed my life. It really did. And that's not hyperbole. That is the honest to God truth. And got exposed to the next level of drum corps, and I saw the Cavaliers and did some great auditioning, looked around at Star Anna Regiment, and I decided to march Cavaliers. And had a very, very different experience in the Cavaliers for sure, and enjoyed it. But I was already starting to get the teaching bug. So I started teaching before I aged out. And these were smaller drum corps and so on and so forth. And I knew by introducing myself to some of the Blue Devils, I figured out where they went to school. So I left Michigan State University. And as you all know, it's a very strong school of music. It's a great drum line. And I decided to transfer.
Jay Webb? Is that?
Yeah. No. It's
Jay wasn't there.
Okay.
This was Chris Thompson. He was with the Madison Scouts. He was one of our teachers. But one of the things about Michigan State is the entire drum line is just chock full of cadets and Cavaliers and regiment and all kinds of strong players all through the Midwest. Blue Coats, of course, and it was great. So tons of talent. But I knew as a percussion performance major, I really needed to transfer, and I really wanted to learn a different style of drumming. And I asked all the Blue Devils where they went to school, and what do you guys think they said?
RCC.
RCC, sure, and in the West Coast, but a lot of them also went to North
UNT.
Texas.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I transferred to North Texas, and I was having an incredible experience there. Loved it, and I was getting ready to graduate. Fortunately for me, I had some great drum corps teaching experiences along the way. Met a guy named Paul Rennick, who I'd never heard of, and would later turn out to be.
I don't know who that is either.
He's an up-and-comer, guys. Give him time.
Yeah, he might get there eventually. He might make it. He's still trying,
I think he's going to find success one of these days. And so I met Paul, and he changed my life. And then Jeff Prospery was there, and I loved meeting Jeff and drumming with Jeff. And Jeff asked me to come up to the Phantom Regiment. So my first world-class gig was a snare drum tech at Phantom Regiment. So that was an incredible experience. And so my life was already kind of heading in one direction. And it's kind of funny how Evan teed this up, because my life is a little bit atypical from a lot of the folks in the drum corps community, but it wasn't starting like that. I was like, okay, I've taught 3 or 4 drum corps, and now I'm aged out. Here we go. I'm going to kind of start this path. And right in my senior year, one of the bands that I had recorded with in Michigan got a record label. So I quit my senior year. I left North Texas. I dropped everything. I took the audition in Nashville. I won the audition, and I moved to Nashville to start recording our second record and going around the world on tour. So I ended up playing drum set and touring for years with this band out of Nashville. And then when that ended, I ended up finishing up some time as a studio musician, so playing drum set, and then I finished my undergraduate degree in Nashville. Then I went to grad school out in New Mexico and had an incredible experience with my teacher, Dr. Fred Bugby, out there. And then somehow in New Mexico, I started meeting different people from Blue Knights. They asked me to go up and kind of set up some technique for them in the front ensemble. And I really developed a love for those people and what they were trying to do. And so I helped them out in 2004, 2005, a larger role. And then they asked me to take over as arranger and caption head in 06. And I just stayed at the Blue Knights all the way until James got in the activity. And then when Evan got in the activity, I was like, okay, I'm out. But all kidding aside, all kidding aside, it was incredible, and it was an amazing experience. And once I got to the end of my career, some of the DCI admins were asking me to judge. And I said, thank you so much. I'm very flattered, but I don't think I would ever be a very good judge. I'm not interested. I hadn't thought about it. And then I took some time to really reflect. And then I decided that I really wanted to give back to this incredible activity that gave me so much. And so I'm really going to engage. And so I judged all the way up until last year. And poetically enough, and I didn't plan it this way, but poetically enough, the last comments I gave were Saturday night championships.
There you go.
Finals.
Hey, I mean, all of those things, it really feels like you made decisions at the right time, like turning down a gig to play drum set and travel the world, like no way. And then obviously, like kind of, at least for now, going out on a high end of judging world championship finals on the last night, like who knows what the future holds, but
right.
I think those were definitely a lot of the wise decisions at that time. I don't think anyone would fault you for that. Was Bill Bachman at UNT there when you were also there?
Bill came in, I think, right as I was leaving, because Bill and I are dear friends. And as you all probably know, when you have friends that go back a long time, you sometimes forget like which year you met. So he was there, and I'm pretty sure we didn't march together, but I think we were there at the same time. And we've done so many clinics, we've played together, and we're dear friends. But I don't remember being in the North Texas line with him.
The Mandela effect, you just misremembering, maybe.
So here's the question then from what you just said. You judged up until this past summer. How did the jump back to teaching at BK happen while you were judging? Did someone just reach out organically? What kind of motivated that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. So the thing that a lot of judges are probably already aware of is when you are in the activity, you develop very special relationships with teachers, designers, admin throughout the country. And I've had soft offers to go work with all kinds of groups, and I've always appreciated that. But I really felt like my bigger role was to stay in the adjudication seat, because I really felt like that's where I needed to be at that point in time. And there was something after this last season, prior to getting my assignment for championships, that told me that, I've been doing this for so many years, and I really, really think that it's time for me to pull back. And the way that I was going to pull back was going to be more in a compositional route, because I compose and do other things outside of teaching. And so that was what I was thinking in the back of my mind. And then when the opportunity came up, after championships happened, I thought this is worth exploring. And so I just re-engaged with the Blue Knights, no one else, because I just felt like that was a home for me. And that relationship that I started so long ago, I really felt like this is a very different musician, a very different composer that I want to go back and see if I can find my voice in a very different way. And to Evan's point earlier, I'm a very different person because of my experiences after all of this time. And so I looked into it, and it felt really comfortable, and I'm super, super grateful and thankful that I did.
Awesome. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, that's great.
And then, in case anyone hasn't caught on, we'll get both of your all's titles and responsibilities. So, Jeff, at Blue Knights, you write and arrange both the front and the battery. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Evan.
Among, I'm sure, a multitude of other responsibilities as well. And then James, you are the sound design and audio caption head, which I'm sure encompasses a lot. But is it both of your all's first year, James?
Yep. This is, yeah, we both came on same time last year as our first year.
Awesome. So obviously it was quite a big transition for the team. I'm sure for the membership as well, for you guys, the staff. But, first and foremost, kudos as well for making the top 12 at the end, which it's not always about the accolades and the scores, but it does feel good to go on at finals night. So,
yes,
and that's an incredible experience for the members of the Blue Knights Ensemble as well. But yeah, we'll get into some of the show stuff and the design behind it. But also, I do want to make sure that we stop and just catch some of these things along the way. A lot of the things that you guys did that were unique. James, I think Jeff was saying before we started, you were the one that kind of put this video together. But just kind of talk a little bit about to the setup for the Blue Knights, like some of the field setup you have, maybe with some of the microphones or some of the challenges with balancing the group live in a ever-changing environment as we shift around the field?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely difficult, and I know, I mean, one of the things that was really nice coming into it, that I've like written and designed with a lot of different groups and worked with a lot of different people, but I think what was most refreshing of being in this group as we all kind of like got to know each other as a design team was everyone's willingness and like hunger to just try something different and unique and do things that we haven't done before, that I think was most refreshing, that I'm sure a lot of people have experienced in, in their full career as a designer, is you get into those design teams or places where there's always kind of like the no person that comes in and you want to do a bunch of things, and there's always a person that kind of sucks the air out of the room and just kind of keeps shutting everything down. And I think that was the cool thing about this summer that made it really fun to just like dive in and try all this stuff, is that we were given that trust from everyone, is each other as a design team, and then just like the members and the admin team and everyone else at Blue Knights gave us the trust to like, yeah, we like, this is what we're here to do, is to do something that we've never done before and haven't tried before. So that was the exciting thing, is just like, hey, we've never done this, and let's figure it out and see what happens. So we knew early on with some of the stuff on the audio side that we wanted to do. I know pretty early we talked about these props that we had, that we referred to them as the obelisks, as there were these like pointy things all over the field. We had a bunch of them all over the field, and 5 of them had these found percussion instruments in it. So it was like pots and pans, like literally some of them were like popcorn bowls. We had an actual cast iron pan in there. Like one of the things was a cast iron pan. We had like frying pans, and then we had these really cool things. We had these things made by, was it Rustic Percussion, Jeff? Is that the name of it? Yeah, that made these planks for us, that we got, and we were able to hang up all these like wooden planks that were actually tuned to specific pitches and could be in a certain key. And then we had these cool little metal plates that were made by Morph Beats, which is sort of like a local Colorado native company that makes a bunch of really cool instruments. That's really awesome. So they made these things for us, and we hung them up in there. And we knew that we kind of wanted that to be a thing, is like not just having props out there to be props, but like how many different things can we do with these props?
And so that was something you thought about, all the different implements you just mentioned and things that you played on, produced sound from. I'm sure there might have been some that organically came about. So did you have like a game plan going into the summer, and then throughout the summer you're like, oh, let's try adding this here and try this different sound from this random thing? Did it kind of evolve, or did you have a really good idea going in?
It evolved a lot. Because I would say we definitely did not, like, as far as the stuff we wanted on there, we had a good idea. I mean, we had all those instruments from day one, but as far as how we would actually do it was very much an
touch and go situation, just kind of like see what worked and see what wouldn't work and that kind of thing.
Exactly. So it ended up being a lot like with me and Jeff, and then our super awesome percussion caption head, Andrew McAfee, last summer. He did a fantastic job of also kind of digging into it. And it definitely went through a lot of iterations throughout the season as far as what we played on there and how we utilized them. Because we did end up, I also knew pretty early on, and also just for myself, of like what I like doing. I like putting microphones on things. That is my love and joy. Is if I could put microphones on everybody, I would. I love microphones on everything, just for the sake of being able to do things with it. It just always expands. Like adding microphones to things just always expands what you can do with it.
I couldn't think of a better opportunity to let you plug your YouTube channel now than what you just said right there. So we'll take a second, and you can. James does have a YouTube channel. Yeah, we'll let him kind of explain what it is, and there'll be a link to it in the description of the video on YouTube. So make sure if you're on Spotify or anything, for sure go check it out. Tons of good info, but I'll let James kind of take a minute and explain his YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. It's called Catherall Audio. So just my last name, Catherall, Catherall. Audio is the YouTube channel. It's just a C and then an A inside of the C is the logo. And it's just a whole bunch of audio stuff. A lot of it started around a software program called Mainstage, which a lot of people in the activity use a lot. It kind of started with that, and then also has just started branching into other things. I've had the opportunity to go to groups like Pulse and Chino Hills and Ayala High School, and I went to Academy Drum Corps and been to a bunch of other high schools and got to just like tour all their gear and talk to them about gear, and then just post a bunch of stuff. I guess the main part or the main like mission of the channel is just to help lower the barriers of learning about audio stuff, especially in the marching arts. That it was I was very fortunate in my upbringing in this activity. I had a lot of great mentors in Kevin Shaw and Tony Nunez, working with them, and they helped teach me a lot in the audio world. But I was very fortunate that I knew them, and I know a whole bunch of people that aren't nearly as fortunate to be surrounded by people like that, that just wanted to help provide resources to people at free 99 is absolutely
the best price. The best price.
I think that's obviously completely very altruistic, but so great for the activity, just because there are so many high schools around the country where they hire the percussion guys. Like, oh, you're going to teach the percussion, right? It's like, yeah, I'll help teach the percussion. It's like, and you're going to run the sound and the audio, and they're like, whoa, I don't know anything about that. So any tools like that out there that are available, because it is becoming an ever evolving activity, and like you said, it opens up so many opportunities for ensembles, especially small ensembles, to be honest.
Yep.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yep. Yeah, so that was just all the main goal, is tackling stuff like that, providing things that would have helped me. I guess that's always like what I'm aiming at, is like what would have been fantastic for me 10 years ago. And then I just like make stuff about that, because I was like, dude, if this video existed 10 years ago, everything would have been different for me. So
been way ahead of the game at that point. So yeah, make sure you go check that out. Again, the link will be in the description of this YouTube video. Go give him a subscribe, all that stuff. Follow on others. Are you on other social media platforms too?
YouTube is sort of the main one. I mean, I post a little bit on Instagram, but not a lot yet. But
okay.
Most of it's on YouTube is where.
All right, so definitely make sure you go subscribe to his YouTube channel. But all right, you want to hit anything else, Evan, or you want to start jumping into some?
Let's go ahead and get in, and as we go through, we can just talk about too, like design choices or source material choices. I know that you two also did a good amount of original composition for that. I was looking through the repertoire, so some of that stuff, and we can talk about the show itself, the design, but yeah, we'll jump in. We can pause, we can replay, we can stop as much.
Well, do we want to hit the bass drum Mapex stuff now? Do you want to hit it now, or you want to wait till the moment comes up?
Let's just wait. We'll get it. I think a lot of people know it's coming.
Yeah, so there's a moment here that when it comes up in the video, we will pause and switch to a different screen and kind of go over how that came about and everything. So yeah, let me switch scenes here. You all should still be able to see. You're watching the screen share on your all's end still? Yep. Alrighty, so the show Unharnessed Blue Knights 2023. We will jump right in, and then we'll see where it takes us.
Thank you to the Blue Knights production team, aka James as a partner. I love concert snare drum. Mixed in. What are they playing on the concert bass there? Oh, they're playing the drum. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Those are marching machines. And we just put them stereophonically, and it was louder and deeper by playing on the actual head rather than the shell.
Interesting.
And for the concert snares, we actually ended up, that was a whole new series made by Chris Lamb. That he had a whole new series of concert snare drums, and so we got its whole array. So all of them have the different drums from his series that he developed with Apex.
Nice. Definitely a good brooding
I want
vibe.
To get away.
Love that drum set lead in. Big open rolls.
This is Verdi's Requiem. This is the big impact for the brass.
Oh, that mirroring that rhythm snare line to the boards was awesome. The metric slowdown.
My man's got toms for days.
So many sounds. Yeah, we'll pause.
Okay. There's so much great stuff. James pointed out already, we are so incredibly indebted to the Mapex Corporation. They just released the Opus 1 series, and you think this is a lot of snare drums. You should see us in 2024. We can't talk about it too much, but we have some really wild ideas how this is going to look out on the field. But they were so kind to outfit any shell, any type of depth combination to fit us. So every one of those keyboard players across the front and our what we call flex player, Andrew, there in the back, they all had these beautiful, beautiful drums of all kinds of different colors and textures, and they just added in. And you'll notice, hopefully throughout the entire show, we bring them back. So that color and that texture compositionally and from a texture standpoint really becomes a through line in the percussion program. So that was the big impact for the Requiem. That's his second movement. And we're really fortunate to have incredible brass arranger. His name is Leslie Gilreath. So it's really, really fun to write through. And so that was a really, really long runway, how that just built up through the pre-show that James composed beautifully. So really seamless how he really weaved the synthetic element into the brass coming in. These trumpet soloists are up on these huge props, and then that just built and built and built. And right where you stopped is where James and I have our first original composition called Released.
Yeah, I just gotta point out real quick, the soundscape of that whole opening statement was just so interesting. Just the variety of sounds, just all the different textures, how that all interplayed together. There was mirroring. I mentioned it in the middle of the video we were watching there, that clip, just like there was a moment where the flat line was having their rhythm mirrored by the boards up front. They did the metric decel perfectly. You had all kinds of sounds, not cells, accenting it the whole time. It was just super interesting to watch. Highly recommend everybody go back or go to the original video. The link to the original video from the Blue Knights YouTube will also be in this video description. Go subscribe to that channel too.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know someone said in our last video, it's like, you guys should talk less. I was like, well, you can go watch the original one. That's fine.
It's kind of the point of the whole thing, you know, to talk about it, talk over it, you know. Yeah, but all right, so you ready to keep moving?
Yes,
Let's
sir.
go.
All right.
Very chaotic.
It's supposed to be chaos.
Nice crescendo roll.
Break free from these constraints.
Man, stylistic changes for days.
Yes, sir. That's Leslie's bread and butter. There's Andrew. Look at all the instruments Andrew has in the show. Timpanus has brake drums he plays with 4 mallets. Everyone is basically a multi-percussionist in the front ensemble. So can you pause it for a second? We'll talk about this. Now,
If I&E was still very prevalent, they would have had options for days.
Yes, sir. So James already talked about this beautifully, but these wooden planks, that's our section leader, Colin, right there, we can see on the right. And his name is Ryan Lankford, and Ryan took a huge chance on us because he makes beautiful handcrafted instruments for the concert hall. So I called him up and introduced myself, and I said, okay, before you hang up on me, I'm going to tell you about something called drum corps. Please don't hang up. Please don't hang up. And then we kept talking, and he was interested. And I said, okay, now we need this particular mode because I wrote the front ensemble in the key of D flat pentatonic major. Can you do that? And he's like, done. I'll make it happen. And so he customized these wooden planks. Out of the 5 obelisks, 2 of them are wooden, and the other 3 are metallic, like James said. And so you can see all of those wooden planks. Our props team, our operations team, most of them are percussionists. So all of spring training, they're out there drilling and holding up and listening and measuring the resonance, and then scrapping it and doing it again and trying fishing wire and then trying steel and all these kinds of things, and they worked their tails off for weeks just so it could be hung up acoustically. Then we got it really, really pure, and then we're really happy with it. Then James comes in and just elevates it so beautifully. And he can talk about all the magic that he brings to it. But everything you're about to see that's small and intricate, we were really proud of how it sounded acoustically. So if you walked up within 1 foot of the instrument, you would be blown away how resonant and rich it was. But James kept that sonority for the top of Lucas Oil. And that's an incredible skill, and he needs to really talk about how he did that. But the challenges that we gave James that he just smashed out of the park were incredible. And you can see, by the way, that's Katie over there on the left. She's got 2 really, really thin popcorn bowls, and then see those 3 pieces of metal. Each one of those, the tops are a note and the bottoms are a different note. So she has 6 notes right there, and those were custom made for us by Morph Beats. This artisan metallic worker makes these beautiful instruments in Colorado. So MORF Beats. Morph Beats.
Are you talking about the 3 horizontal bars going here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They look like metallic marimba bars hanging vertically.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
on the
I'm
left
with you.
side.
Yeah.
those
I'm
on
with
the
you.
left side.
So,
James, how did you do that?
Yes. So real quick, once again, because I want to give him a shout out too, because the ops team was amazing. We literally had like probably one of the best ops teams in all of DCI that
Incredible.
busted their butts to put all these props together. We got like the structure itself, like basically the big metal thing, was manufactured by a guy named Jeff Herr that we
Out of
hired.
North Carolina, isn't he?
Yeah. So they did all that and then sent it to us, and then our ops team did everything else. So they got them put onto those baseboards, and then they put these like those like horizontal things with all the holes in it, whatever those like brace bracket things. They did all that with this like thing to get all these hung up. It's like all this like steel wires put in between them, and then like it was just everything, and we would just keep asking more things from them as a design team, and then they would get it done. And we ended up like, if you see they all have color on the inside of them, on the outside of them. We got these vinyl wraps like 36 hours before Allentown, and they got
Incredible.
all of them put on for Allentown, as we had all of that color, and it was awesome, and it like instantly made the props amazing. Like we saw those, it was like, yeah, that's a 10. It's amazing. So our ops team knocked it out of the park, getting all of that stuff put together and helping us look great and sound great by getting all that stuff done. Because like these props for sure were a full season project, because we have all of them hanging, and then I put a microphone in each of these props. I don't know how clearly you'll be able to see it in this video, but there's a wireless mic on all 5 of these props, that basically it was hanging down in the middle of it. And then we ended up putting like the little body pack, we Velcroed it to the very top on the inside of the prop. And then just like by pure coincidence of it all working out, is the prop had a little tiny hole in the top of it where we could stick the antenna out to make sure that the wireless would connect and it would all work. So there's like a tiny little antenna sticking out of the tops of all 5 of those props so that it could hang. And then we ended up using these like elastic straps to make sure that the mic would stay in place. Because if you've watched the show, they knock them down, they pull them up, they move them all over the place. So we just wanted to make sure that everything stayed consistent. So we strapped those down. And yeah, so it was a fun project. You'd have to put them on, you had to climb up the prop and like stick it on. And then, because we would take it on and off every day. So to get it on there, you'd have to climb up the prop, stick the thing on, pull it off from the Velcro, get it out. So it was in every single day.
So
Taking those
definitely
things on and
sweating a little bit during the unload process at the shows.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, it was cool. Got him in there, and I mean the thing that was nice is it like the development of it took time as far as the execution of the playing of it. We hung the microphones from it, and the first thing we started with was just doing like a little bit of reverb. And this will kind of get into like their nerdy details. So for any of the people that want the nerdy details, but there's a little bit of reverb on each of them. We definitely did a lot of balancing of each individual person, because some of them, like the wood planks, were super soft, and so we had to boost those a lot, and all the metallic stuff was really bright, and so we had to bring that down. And what I also ended up doing towards the end, which actually helped a lot, is I did an octave doubling of it. So I basically used like a pitch shifter that could make it all come out an octave lower than it originally was.
Oh man.
And it was cool. It was super cool. It helped with like the depth of the sound a lot. Is that what you're hearing come out of the speakers was the acoustic sound plus an octave doubling underneath of what was happening acoustically.
This band's an
Yeah.
evil
Yeah.
genius.
And it kind of ended up all that. So it was a lot of fun. And once we kind of figured all that stuff out, it was cool.
All of that is awesome, and it illustrates one of my favorite things about drum corps as an activity, and kind of indoor as well. It's just a passion project. It's a labor of love. All this MacGyvering that has to go on just to make your creative vision come to life in the way that you see it in your brain and in your head when you're planning and designing all this, and all the hoops you have to jump through. It's like, how can we make this work? And it's nothing but a labor of love, and the evolution. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. And I'm going to make a really, really bold prediction and request from the activity.
Uh-oh.
We've got a high drum trophy. We've got a high brass trophy. If there was ever such thing as a high synthetic sound design trophy, Catherall 10-pointed the next person. It wasn't even close. Now, here's the thing. Did you hear everything he just said? We haven't even scratched the surface for the other 10 minutes of the show.
I know.
James, can you share
man.
with everybody how many channels we used and how many wireless mics we used on brass and percussion?
Well, I don't have it written down, but I know for sure it was like total channel count of the full group was about 70 channels on our mixer.
That's a
which
fake number. That's not a thing. That's a
we
fake
had to-
number.
We got a new mixer. We got the Allen and Heath D Live just to make sure that we could, because I knew that too when we were talking during the off season in like January. I was like sitting there and I was like, oh man, we're gonna need. So I started messaging people. So the first guy I messaged, his name's Ryan Unangs, and he helped us out a lot with Romeo Music and hooked us up with all of our gear. And I sent him a message and I was like, hey man, currently our mixer can handle like 40 channels, and right now like I just like did a quick penciling and I was like, we're gonna need at least like 60. And he was like, oh, okay, for sure. And so he got back to me, and by the end of the season we ended up having 70 channels, and 22 of those were wireless. So we were using 22 different wireless mics, and then the rest of it was miking. I told you I love putting mics on stuff. That's what I like.
That's
I like putting mics on things. So we had a lot of mics, we had a lot of channels, used a lot of stuff, and it's fun. It's great. It was definitely stressful, but it was a good time. It was a fun stress. It was a.
I think there's also a demographic out there, or just, I don't want to say purists, but people who'd be like, oh, mics. But like, you still have to make good sounds, and that's always been the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the mics just highlight what you're already doing. At the end of the day,
Exactly.
the sounds are still the sounds. Like there are ways to like obviously morph things for effect, but like, yeah, the sounds are the sounds. So I'll leave it at that.
100% agree. Yep, and that's why we're able to do stuff like that for Blue Knights and for like a world-class drum corps, is because the performers were making awesome sounds, and I wanted to make sure that all of those awesome sounds could be heard and nothing was getting lost in the mix.
And so they can make even more awesome sounds. Like,
Yep.
I think it's come a long way. Obviously, there's the miking of the brass and stuff and other things, and then like people using shotgun mics and this and that. But to me, it's just the equivalent of what has been happening already for years with front ensemble miking. It's like, yeah, we want to be able to hear like someone play a concert marimba like run with some very soft mallets and just warm and tasteful, and be heard from the box without like beating the absolute crap out of it just to get it to project.
Just go watch the
so-
keyboards in like the 80s and 90s before they
Man,
started
just
doing this.
hammering.
They're using the hardest mallets on the planet, and it's all just the sharpest. Not harsh is
Which is what they
it's
had
not
to
the
do.
right word. They had to do it. The technology wasn't there, but like, gone are the days, and I think it's only a positive thing that you're not having to just wail to be heard on these front ensemble instruments.
There were some very talented ice cream trucks in the 80s and the 90s. Agreed. So this particular point of the show, James just shines once again. But I do want to point out Andrew McAfee. James mentioned him earlier. Andrew's a good friend of ours, and he was our percussion caption head. And you see in that shot right there, that Mike rewound to, you see all the obelisks are in this nice little pretty row there. On the field, they were moving around and they had their own environmental demand. So think about this for a second. When we talk about environmental demand, we talk about simultaneous responsibilities, physical responsibilities. Oh, I'm in a lunge with my right hand flam drag. Okay, I get it. It's challenging. For these kids, they're playing, every note is a different feel, texture, sound, and darkness, lightness, etc. Popcorn bowl to custom metallic instrument with a mic on it. Plus, they're listening out of their right ear to the 45. Then the bass drums come on this side. Then they're listening. So the environmental demand of the pit playing new instruments mic'd in a way that we've never heard in the activity before was a huge ask. And Andrew McAfee is such a great musician, and he just took my score and he looked at it and said, okay, when we are we're standing still, we can play as a chamber group, and it sounds like very contemporary 20th century music. There's counterpoint and so on and so forth. On the field, we need to craft it in such a way that we can hear this sound and this rhythm that gets overlapped and so on and so forth. The entire composition dovetails into the moment that we've all been talking about, which we call the melodic bass drum moment. But the overall composition is called released. And so everything dissolves into musical chaos. So it starts with musical chaos. You heard those 3 exposed rolls. Each of those rolls are a slightly faster metric feel. It's like 7, 6s, 5s, or maybe the other way. But they get softer and softer. So we did the opposite that feels good in your hands. Typically, we do the opposite, right? As snare drummers. Are you both snare drummers, Evan and Mike?
Yeah,
We are.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did the opposite. So we had that texture that ended up going the opposite way just because that chaos needed to be represented compositionally and through feel and tension. So this all breaks down. We go to the melodic bass drums. And so Andrew McAfee masterfully blended and mixed that and edited the parts just beautifully. And this will be a recurring theme. If I haven't said it yet, we knew in the winter that this was going to be a sophisticated show, and we knew it was not going to be great right away.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we needed the entire summer to get there. And competitively, we're thrilled for the students that they did, but we knew it was a very clear and intentional choice for us to try to push the activity. And if we didn't make it, we didn't make it. But that's where we all were. And what I've said my whole career is drum corps is already too hard not to take chances and do it with people you love, right? It is. It's just hard.
That's a good motto.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we all know that, right? There's going to be moments that it's always going to be hard and you question why you're doing this. So we all really galvanized our spirit in the beginning and said, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to take all these chances? Are we going to put the ensemble in these crazy positions and ask these performers to do this? And we all collectively held hands and said, we're doing it. And we knew that we were not going to be competitively strong early on. That was a choice we made because we wanted to make sure these concepts were represented in the activity.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Phenomenal.
Be based within yourself.
Yep. So let's jump right back in.
Listen
Let's
to
keep
these
chugging through.
crazy note hung instruments that are intricately microphoned and enhanced. 2 octaves. Let's go.
There's the wooden planks. Thank you, Rustic Percussion. There's the morph beats and found objects.
There's the cast iron pan, right when they cut away.
Timpani player playing 3 mallets on break drums.
Best way to cook a steak. Cast iron.
Here it comes.
That's so cool.
We'll go back in a second.
Yeah, yeah.
This feature's almost done. And then it finishes.
All right, so I'm sure some people are probably like, what did I just watch?
Yeah, what did I just hear? What did I just experience?
Exactly. So the easiest way to start this whole crazy phrase is to figure out the entire aesthetic of our show is called Unharnessed. So everything that we did musically was to justify the theme and the program show. So what we're doing is we're trying to break free, and you'll hear that literally from break on through from the doors, doom, 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 dee, dee, doom, dee. That pop song that we use. So we have all this motivic material, but from a sonic standpoint, we felt like we want to break free from traditional sounds we've heard in drum corps. So that's all of the found instruments and all the tune things, all those planks and those metallic sounds were corresponding with the mode that the front ensemble was in. So the front ensemble, if you listen really carefully, if you watch it again, you can hear break on through to the other side, just really softly, while the bass drums and the found instruments are kind of cross fading. So we get to the bass drums, and this all starts from Chris Hankus and John Harville. Those two gentlemen at the Mapex Corporation heard about what the show was about, and I was explaining a little bit about my background because I'm a 20th century nerd. I'm actually more of a classical musician, and my teacher Fred Bugby really instilled that love of Steve Reich and John Cage. And so I told him what was going on. And right there, what you're showing on your screen is the restaurant we met in that booth at the very top. And they said, well, this is a secret we've been holding on for years. Chris Hankus actually had this idea, and he experimented. We've been afraid to really release it in public. And I looked him in the eye and said, are you guys willing to take a chance with us? Because it sounds like this show could really, really use it. So you can see that's where we met at PASIC, literally a year from this past week. So we started there, and if you'll scroll down just a little bit, that is the illustrious John Harville. So now this is a good opportunity to tell people how it works. So what you can see there, John is a real flattering picture of John there, testing out the breathing tubes. I apologize, John. I love you, buddy. So the idea for those of you that didn't see the show is all of the traditional bass drummers, we just call those the pitched bass drums. So our bass line would put down their normal drums, then they picked up these custom drums that Mapex made for us. And the idea that Chris Hankus and John pitched to me that we just ran with is, how about we seal the drum? There is no way for air to escape anywhere in the drum. No ports, no air holes, except for a breathing tube. So we're going to put a breathing tube up here by our chest. So it's right in front of the carrier. And by the way, don't worry, we'll put an actual pressure gauge here so you can see which note you're playing. So John went to town for weeks and weeks and months and months. They started making prototype after prototype after prototype. This is him sending me a picture of one of the notes on a tuner. Then he would blow as hard as he could, and he'd tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it, and see if he could get it up to a fifth or a sixth or an octave. And then he would say, okay, well, here's what worked, here's what didn't. So in the factory, he started to prototype all of these different shells. You can go on, Mike.
Sure. Let's scroll down a bit.
And that might have been one of the first ones there. That might have been one of the first shells that they had to sacrifice.
So it says, for those that can't read this, if you're on podcast services, I apologize. Go to YouTube and watch the thing. But I'll read the bullet point that the drums were made from older one-offs around the warehouse, including some very sweet lacquer finishes. Those all had to be sanded so that the green sparkle wrap could adhere to the shell. So this is, again, this all goes into how much of a labor of love and a passion project this show was. Like, just jumping through so many hoops, MacGyvering so many things to get the sounds they wanted. It's insane. This is all news to me. I liked your all show a lot last summer. Like, I respected what you all did, but I didn't realize the layers were there to all of this to make it happen.
And just, the drum industry, continuing to experiment to push what we're able to offer from a compositional standpoint as well.
Right.
Great point, guys. And then what does this say, Mike? Does this have to do with how he had to treat the interior?
Right. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing a picture of the interior of a bass drum shell, and it says the only holes cut in the outer wrap were for the lug casings. Wooden dowels were cut to the depth of the shell to fit in the holes that the normal air vents were, and then sanded down to be even and smooth with the inner shell. It dawned on me during the trials that the condensation levels inside a drum being breathed in with no air vents could get funky. That's probably true. That's a good valid point. With the shells getting wet and the possibility for mold.
Right.
Mold in marching drums. To combat this, we put them on a Lazy Susan and evenly applied layers of Flex Seal, and this is unreal. The
It's
layers
crazy,
of all
right?
of this is unreal. Layers of
Crazy.
Flex Seal in order to provide a surface inside the drum that could be cleaned on a regular basis.
Incredible amount of detail and hours and hours and hours. And by the way, I'm learning about this too. So I don't think our percussion staff knew this. I don't think the actual bass drummers knew this, and the whole world couldn't have known about this till now. So I'm really happy to showcase all the hard work that went into this. So
Well,
thanks again to
We'll
Chris
clip
and
this
John.
whole section, so the podcast will go out and we'll make a clip of this whole segment so it's isolated by itself.
Cool.
Nice.
And then that's obviously a shot of the air pressure gauge, right, Mike? Does he talk about that?
Mm-hmm. So as a trombone player, if you're watching, you can see a pressure gauge right now. As a trombone player, we can go to the same note every time because we know the positions on a trombone slide. This bass drum concept was completely foreign to all. A 3-pound air pressure gauge was drilled in and sealed off in order to provide a consistency to both the players and ensemble. It also looked super techy and a conversation piece.
That's John's sense of humor right there.
Yeah, we actually on one of the first days of getting those during all days, we had our brass caption head.
Oh yeah.
Do those just because we also we talked with our brass caption head about doing like breathing gym with our bass
That's right.
drummers.
Yeah.
And
That's
seeing
incredible.
how far. Yeah, because a human being could not do the 3 pounds. Like he was our
Right.
brass caption head, been playing for years and years and years. And I
do
think he was blacking out at 2. Like he was
Jeez.
he was going crazy, pushing as hard as he could.
Right.
And yeah, it was crazy.
That is amazing. So now you're seeing, if you're watching the finished product, basically the green finish on the bass drums, the finished product, the gauges are on top and everything. You can see the air tube right below the gauges. The finished product was made. The finished product was what made it to the field, of which I'm more proud of the musicians that owned it versus the old grumps that had nothing better to contribute than a bunch of teardown comments.
Great.
Oh, Jesus.
So I can't wait to talk about that. So everything that you just read, thank you, Mike. So all of that incredible work that Mapex did, John Harville did for us, when you went up to the bass drums and we finally got it to that point, you could hear it. Oh yeah, I guess it is kind of going up and down. That was as loud and as effective as it could be. Then the other 50% of the magic of that moment all came from Mr. Catherall. So James, you want to talk us through how you put of course he put a wireless mic on it, but that's only half of the story. Wait till he starts talking about the vocoder and how we pitched the synth to be in the right chordal structure as the front ensemble. So we had to put the melodic bass drums in the same key as the front ensemble. Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of stuff. All right, I'll get nerdy again. If you guys want to go look all the
down
stuff
the rabbit
up
Do
hole.
it. We are down the rabbit hole so far. Just keep rolling with it.
So yeah, and that was another one. I mean, because yeah, Jeff, I feel like I can still remember Jeff telling us about this in December. That we were sitting and he's like, guys, you'll never believe what we're gonna be getting. They just told me about this drum, and he'd would go off on these bass drums. So I was like, okay. And then I felt pretty strongly because they were also a little bit softer than normal bass drums, because those air holes is actually a big way of the way the sound travels. If there's nowhere for the air to really go, then it was just way harder for it to project. So I knew no matter what, we were going to have to put microphones on them. So that was also luckily planned. Because Jeff told us about these in December, we were able to plan ahead and make sure we had the mics that we needed. So we had to get a wireless mic for each bass drum and put one on each of them. Same thing, as they were all Velcroed, basically right next to where that pressure gauge, you can see it in the picture right now. Right next to that pressure gauge is where the mic pack sat. And then we put it on the drum and clipped it so it was pointing at the drum. And then from there, we ran it through main stage. And that was another, it was a whole bunch of experimenting of just trying a whole bunch of different stuff to see what would help it the best. Because the main goal was to try and accentuate the pitch bending up and down the most. So we ended up going with the vocoder after trying a whole bunch of different stuff and just seeing what we could do with it. And So the vocoder was the one that helped the best and made it cool. And then it was another project between me and Andrew McAfee, our percussion caption head, that we ended up doing it a couple times. There was more than a few days where it was like, all right, bass drums, synths, you're with me and Mr. McAfee. We're gonna go over to this corner of the school and play for the next 3 hours and figure this out. So we do that stuff. We figured out a bunch of chords and did a whole thing. And McAfee was a big part of putting together the chord structure of it. And it went through the vocoder. And so one synth player was doing the vocoder that was triggering the sound. So every time the bass drummer hit the drum, that would trigger the vocoder through main stage. And then the synth player was holding down the keys. And so that's what pitches you would hear coming out. So they could change chords and it would slightly change the vocoder. And then to also help with the bending, then the other synth player they had their pitch bend wheel that was bending the pitch up and down as well. So they were kind of bending the vocoder along with it. And then on top of that, what we also kind of found out is with the way the vocoder was and the way the part was written is there was a lot of shaping, and the vocoder naturally doesn't have a lot of shaping to be able to react to that. So they also were doing the mod wheel at the same time to do some pitch bending. And then also they had another wheel that was controlling the volume. So they'd be pulling volume up and down while the pitch was going up and down. And then just more layers on top of that. I mean, anything outside of that was just kind of like standard audio stuff. I think there was like a compressor on it a little bit. We did a noise gate as well, just to make sure only the right sounds. Because the other part that made it difficult is we had to tune the drums really low to get the most pitch bend out of them. So the drum heads were tuned way lower than normal, and they were muffled. We had to put the muffling on the outside for the same reason that they coated the inside, is if we put that foam muffling, it would have just gathered moisture and gotten all moldy. So we had to put the foam muffling. There was no muffling inside. It was only that ring on the outside was the only muffling. So it made it difficult for the sound of the drum because they were definitely more boomy than normal because of that. Mm-hmm. So it took a lot of audio treatment to get it to still sound bass drum-esque. And still work. So that was definitely a huge project. We were tweaking that all the way up until finals week, was just little tweaks here and there, changing the audio sound of it a little bit, changing things about it a little bit. It's a lot of stuff that, like the other thing, I mean, it's just like still going down the rabbit holes. We had to make sure, like you have to make sure, because it's all 5 of them and they're all split and it needs to sound the same, is that all of their mics were the same distance. So it's just a little clip with like I don't even know, but it's basically like a metal thing. How the mic is it's got the clip, and then there's like a metal arm that you can basically bend wherever you need it, and so you
like
bend
a clamp
it
with a clip on it.
Yeah, and so it kind of stays in place. So we had to like get the mics on, and then I had like a little measuring thing to make sure that each mic was the same distance from the drum head, so that it wouldn't be like bass 5 was super loud and then everyone else was really quiet because their mic was like on the drum head. It like had to be even so that it would sound like a bass line going up and down, and we wouldn't have
Just
balancing.
so many layers.
Yeah,
So many
unreal.
layers.
There's
And
one
like you
more
were
layer.
Before I let you go, Jeff, I'm going to grab some bourbon. Keep talking. I'm going to keep recording. I'll be right back. This is awesome.
Then,
Okay.
And like Jeff was mentioning earlier with the added environmental challenge with the accessory players, and like what James was just talking about with, like, we had to pitch the bass drum so down, like the juxtaposition of the actual drums they're playing versus the tension on these drums, I'm sure was quite drastically different.
Yeah, their touch. That's a great point, Evan. One of the things that was wild, and I don't think you could ever appreciate this unless you walked into that section, you saw all 5 of the drums stagger breathing. So you heard this seamless line. Let's say the part goes up and down, and they had all their split rhythms. So the composite rhythm, they had to be just as accurate as any other world-class bass line, right? So they're playing this crazy world-class stuff, but then in the part, I wrote arrows up and down. So where we wanted the pitch to go up and down, they didn't know where they were in the run. They just see their part, and if it's in the middle of a down arrow, they have to use their ear, and then they have to release breath or provide breath. So and they're also doing body and choreo. So
I just have like a brass caption head in my mind that's like, don't breathe on the bar lines.
Exactly. Don't breathe on the bar. That's funny. We should have said that. But yeah, so you had all their different breathing responsibilities that was separate from their individual rhythm which is separate from the pitch, which is separate from their expression, which is separate from their body, their simultaneous responsibilities with choreo.
Hey, if it's easy, everybody would do it.
Right. So
Fair.
I have backed up. Let's rewatch that phrase, and then we can stop again if we want, or let it keep rolling. Or Evan, you got something else?
We'll just also listen for what he was talking about, the break through the others. I will listen for
Am I
that.
back far enough, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Let it go here.
Here it comes. You can hear it climbing.
Much space.
Yes, sir.
It's so cool.
So
And
much
even
innovation.
those last little bugadas, they were climbing in pitch. Yeah. And this is transitional material. This is break on through the doors. It's our great timpanist Sendin.
I love Flam 5 rolls, or cheese rolls, whatever you want to call them.
Sir. The great Noah Caldera. Shout chorus in 7.
Ooh.
Here's the DSC array finally. The Verdi's Requiem.
Break on through.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great ensemble moment.
So cool.
And then if you'll stop right here. So this outro right here, the break on through, one of the most ambitious things that I've ever tried in drum corps was right here. This is an ensemble phase. So one of the things that we felt would be, and by we, I really mean me, and I had to fight everybody on it, but it's one of the things that Steve Reich does really well is he writes for piano and different instrumental phases. So you take a like rhythm, or in his case, maybe a like melody like this, and then what you do is you take one of those instruments and you just push it ever so carefully faster and faster, and it breaks apart, and just for a brief moment, it splits itself. So if you're in 16ths, they become 32nd notes, and then it finally locks into the next partial. And so that phase technique is pretty common in contemporary ensembles. Drumming, one of his pieces uses it, and it's either with mallet instruments or drums. And so the idea here was to take an entire drum corps and phase. So what we did visually is had side, is that where we started, James? Side 2 in the beginning?
Yeah, everyone was on side 2, and then we were splitting from there.
Yes, sir. So deem bum bum, but the ostinatos right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, d d d d. That was our pulse, and we tried many different iterations. Maybe the low brass would stay in tempo, then the middle and the high brass with the battery would pull apart, and they would pull apart through a retardando, and the ostinato stays in tempo. Then we thought, no, the full brass line will stay at one tempo, then the battery will pull apart. So we tried all kinds of different iterations all summer. And as you can imagine, it was really tough to read. And even when we played it really well, it was still hard to pick up. So we ended up coming up with kind of a very readable version of that, and it just went to the retard a little bit sooner. But this is one of those moments that James was talking about. As a staff and the kids and the teaching staff, we all said, are we really going to do this? And if it doesn't work, we're going to fire Ausdemore. I'm kidding, kind of. But that was one of the chances we took to say, if we're truly going to say we're breaking ground, let's do this. Yep. And so that started in spring training, where when you close your eyes, you hear deem bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum all together, and then all of a sudden it starts to sound like your very first high school marching band gig, and it starts to break apart like somebody is amazing slow, and it just sounds like chaos. And then we got better and better at the pacing of it, and so we got pretty clear at it, and then we just decided to edit it towards the end of the season. But it's something to this day I'm really proud of all of the students, all the staff that we went for it. So that was an ensemble phase that we may or may not have had to talk about every night and critique. Fair, James?
Yes.
I'm even more glad we did this because I didn't know any of this, and I'm sure most people that saw your show over the summer had no clue any of this was happening half the time, and all this nuance was there and just intricacies all over the place across the field, and it's so cool.
But it's like one of those things. It's like, are we going to try to create something that's a moment that somebody else hasn't done, or are we just going to like
do what's normal, and
or are we just going to revert to like points on the page? I mean, at some point there is a give and take of both of those, but those ideas or those concepts where like, this is going to take to the last night, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, but if it works, it's still going to take to the last night. So
right.
We were prepared to fall on the sword, and that took a lot of courage, and we're really proud of it. One of the things that was neat is in the score, before we saw where it was going to be staged, you saw this part of the front ensemble is paired with the mellophones. So at different points of this process, we had mellophones phasing slow with the vibraphones, and then the low brass and the timpani and the bass drums were in tempo, and it was wild. And then we get the drill and we figure out what's going to work best, and it was really, I'm going to use the word fun. It was fun for me because I wasn't in the trenches every day, but it was really gratifying to see us go for it. So again, kudos to the incredible teaching staff and the rest of the design staff.
Nothing risked, nothing gained.
Yep. And now we are in the ballad. This is called Submission.
Ooh, those chimes.
Those are made by a good friend of mine. Yep, those are handmade for us. And his name is Nathan, and he is an incredible musician. He lives here in Dallas, and he made those custom for us. Those are individually hand-cut glass chimes.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Every single one.
Pretty moment.
It's our rock star Maggie.
That little flourish at the end.
There's Ryan.
Man, so much space. Virtuosic.
These players are so talented.
Delicate. I love Crotales. This is probably one of the easier parts of the show to mic, to be honest.
Yeah. He's like, little do you know.
Yeah. After all of that all of that before.
That's right. And now the battery comes in for supportive material here for the big impact. Through the start on.
Just all kinds of metered rolls throughout all that. Jesus.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on.
5, 7, 9, 11s, oh my.
Got to keep the pulse for the drum maker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. I
It
remember
is
those
for
days.
sure. Yeah, 100%.
I was a part of that.
Yep. Yep.
I have pulled this
Ooh.
weight, but I find a way to lift myself.
And now this is what we call Catherall City. James, you want to talk? This is actually called Absolution of Word, and this is really fun to put
Want me to
together.
pause for a sec or let it keep going?
Colloquially referred to as Catherall City. Yes.
You want to watch some first or you want to talk first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that that whole part was where I kind of took the lead on everything that was put together there. So that was kind of like mainly a sound design forward, like a lot of synthetic stuff, plus a little bit of like front ensemble helping accentuate some of the ideas and some of the hit points and adding in some of the textures. But also mainly it was sort of helping carry as far as the story on the show or what was happening on the field is sort of like the first moment where we really start like breaking free as a full group on the field. So that's like in the show in that spot is it started. So during the moment right before that with the big battery hit is we had a color guard performer in the middle of that pyramid that you could see in the very back in the video. They were being suspended in the air on that pyramid, kind of like hanging and spinning around and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then they get lowered, and you can kind of hear that in the sound design as they're getting lowered. And then the sound design kind of does this like downward pitching as they're going down. And then they run across the ensemble, and they motivated everyone to rip off we had this rip away sort of thing on the chest of the uniform, and so they kind of motivated everyone to rip that off. And so that was kind of all of this sound design was sort of dark, and there was some narration happening with it that I forgot what we called these. We had two different words. I think we called this part the spoken word part, and then we had the rhythmic word, which is going to come right after that. Was like the next part. But yeah, this was like a very sound design heavy, and it also there was like this whole thing with the sounds that all the props got like pulled down to the ground, and there's the sounds that you can hear with it. I don't know if it already passed. I think it comes up in a few seconds as they pull all the props down, and there's this sort of sound design to go with it that was like knocking down all the props, and it sort of had this like squeaky bending metal and breaking metal type of sound as we were pulling everything down. And then takes us into the next part, which I guess we can let the next part happen, and
Sure,
then we can
sure.
kind of talk about what it was.
But I find a way to lift myself up. I want to get away.
Just building the intensity.
And so I sink further down into my own.
Yeah, good rolls. Jesus.
Someone I forgot to be. I can't move. Cut me
Good
And
coordination.
then
between
if
the
you'll
vocal.
stop there just for a second. Yeah, that was a fun. Yeah. I'm happy to talk about this real quickly.
Sure, sure.
I have a friend of mine named Darren. And Darren introduced me to a band a long time ago called The Books. Have this really unique track where there's a really consistent rhythm, and there's this narration, and the accents line up with random accents in the ostinato. And so we went from the spoken word, all that stuff you just heard James create through the soundscape and all the accelerando that goes right into the rhythmic word. And the rhythmic word, if you notice, the bass drums are playing an ostinato the whole time, either eighth notes or eighth note triplets. They go back and forth because the upper battery is playing all kinds of angular rhythms that are supposed to rub against the ostinato. So they're playing these upbeat whatever, sevens and fives and singles, because it was supposed to really represent the real uncomfortable asymmetry of that rhythm all the way through. And we turned it into a feature and they put some body to it. But that was how the spoken word dovetailed into rhythmic word. And then this last part of the show called Freedom. And you'll recognize this is Pharrell Williams. Brilliant brass arranger Leslie Gilreath put this in a really obvious swing style for us.
Heck yeah.
All right, we'll jump. I backed up a little bit, so we'll
be able to get some of that bass from ostinato. So many stylistic changes and just feels throughout the entire program.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
There's so many different meters used for rolls throughout the show in the battery writing.
Yes.
There's very few just like eighth note rolls, like 8 note 5, triplet, 7, just like all over the place.
Yes, sir.
We reclaim what is ours.
Extended phrase.
Yeah, super long phrase. I love the mirroring of those big rhythms in the concert snare in the front. That was cool.
A little flashy in there, a little stick flip action going
all over the place.
Concert snare. I don't think I've ever done a stick flip on a concert snare.
No, I definitely have not.
Oh boy.
I didn't catch that till the recording came out, by the way.
Probably would have told him to stop.
I feel like I'm going to be a
That's
broken
right.
record here, but I was excited for doing this one with you all tonight. I'm even more like glad that I did because there's so many layers. So many layers that I didn't get just watching lot videos of the battery or seeing the show on the Flow stream a couple times, you know, through regionals Evan and I watched and everything throughout the season. And this was just been phenomenal to get the insights and the little things behind the scenes for this one because there was so much going on the whole time.
Yes, there was a lot of like
I
really
appreciate
deep
you saying that.
Yeah, a lot of deep intellectual layers. I mean, even for that last part is after the rhythmic word stuff happens, we do another stylistic change into like the swing stuff. And that was supposed to really represent us finally breaking free rhythmically from being very strict, like especially the dichotomy from the very beginning of the show. So the very beginning of the show starts very like straightforward march. It has all the concert snares. It has like the sort of trumpet fanfare kind of thing going on. That was supposed to be very straightforward, like march, very strict, very like rudimental. And then by the time we get to the end, there was all like jazzy swing rhythms, all that kind of stuff happening was like representing that journey from beginning to end of being
it's like over the course of the show, they became unharnessed.
Right, exactly. So that was that was the part of the musical style to like try and help get all of those things across. So yes, definitely a lot of things that we talked about that we did our best to try and convey to the audience and give them a lot of different things to listen for and like dig in on maybe like a second watch or a third watch of being able to like understand some of those layers as well.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to see what you all do next summer. I know you told us before we started recording you just had the first like in Colorado camp in person and everything this past weekend. So today is Monday, so like a day ago, 2 days ago. How's the season shaping up? What's going on so far? Everything looking good? What's the show title? What's the uniform look like? What's the drum finish? Give us everything.
How can people get involved?
That's right. We're really excited to debut Feifel Goes West Part 6.
I was hoping for My Little Ponies, but Feifel Goes West will work well too.
We're very excited. So I just wanted to point out one last thing here. So again, you guys have been so great to invite us on and just having an opportunity to really advocate for all those hardworking kids that came out and took a chance on us. And the other thing too that I really wanted to just share that I might have kind of a unique perspective on this. The last time that I really taught Blue Knights for a long period of time, most of the staff were either really, really dear friends of mine and colleagues where we all saw music and technique the same way, or they were all students of mine or former students of mine. This time around, it was absolutely the opposite way. So I was able to get to know James. I got to know Andrew McAfee and his entire battery staff, Kyler Altenhoff and his front ensemble staff. They're just lights out, brilliant teachers, great people. But one of the things that I was really, really curious about is everybody on that percussion staff has an incredibly eclectic background. So you had Crown and Devils and indoor here and indoor there all over the United States. And what a testament to Andrew McAfee as the percussion caption head last year for him to just galvanize everyone's strengths and talents for the sake of this crazy, crazy melting pot of a show. And so one of the things that I think sometimes gets just a little bit overinflated in our activity, gentlemen, is the fact that, oh, they've got their staff and they hit the drum the same way. And hear me clearly, I believe in that too. That's very, very, very important. However, last year was somewhat of a testament to the fact that you can take really smart, dedicated, passionate people from very disparate backgrounds, and as long as the music and the sound unites you, then you can make something really, really special. So I just want to publicly thank all of those incredible students in 23 for coming out and trusting us.
I think that's very well said, and I will say I think that's one of the beautiful things about the activity. You can have there's more than one way to skin the cat. You can have approaches where everyone's very on the same page, same background, consistent across the board in all sections, and it works out super well. And then you can have groups where you have techs and arrangers and staff members that come from all different walks of the activity and educational backgrounds, and it still somehow coalesces into an amazing creative product at the end of the day. And it's just one of those things that, again, another one of the reasons I love this activity. Everyone does it differently, and everyone puts out an awesome product at the end of the year, getting to the end goal in a very different way.
Well said.
Well, this was freaking phenomenal. I mean, it's been just about an hour and a half of actual recording time so far. Time flies when you're having fun. I mean, this might be one of the longest ones we've done in a while, and it was well worth it. I mean, just so many insights, so many cool things talked about. It's great meeting you all. We'd never, I think, talked to either one of you or met you until we hopped into the server tonight. So to just kind of say what's up and get this thing rolling. But I mean, I don't have anything else unless you all do. I mean, we kind of talked about, make sure you go check out James's YouTube channel, link in the description, link in the description to the Blue Knights YouTube channel. Jeff, phenomenal. Can't wait to meet you all in person at WGI Finals or DCI if it doesn't happen there or whatever. So, I mean, Evan, you got anything else?
No, unless you guys got any information about audition season.
Yeah.
I know it's probably already underway. If there's anything else, though, that you guys want to throw in, feel free to do so.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, it is absolutely not too late. We are really fortunate that we're spreading ourselves to many cities: El Paso, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Indy. I'm doing a big clinic at the IPA, the Indiana Percussion Association, with a whole bunch of talented folks like Bios, Ralph, and Harvey will be there. I'm giving a clinic for the students there in the state of Indiana, and then I'm also doing one for directors, judging concepts, etc. And then we're going to have an audition camp for Blue Knights. So it is not too late if you'd like to audition for the Blue Knights. We have a wonderful video audition process like all the drum corps do. So if you're interested in what we do, we only try to treat our members as well as we can and give them a unique musical experience. That's the bottom line of our mission, is just we want to be great. We want to be great while being different. So if that's you, please reach out to us and please take a shot at our organization. We'd love to meet you.
There it is. I can't think of a better way to end it. So subscribe, comment, like. What do you think about what we talked about here on YouTube? You know, share the video, like the usual YouTube spiel. Instagram, Facebook, Patreon. Hit the join button here on YouTube, and we will see everybody in the next one.
Peace.